Hi, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of The Story is Right Outside Your Door. I am Yoni Berg from Holster Mountain Tours, live on Givat HaMatos. And I'm going to get to what is Givat HaMatos and why it's called that in just a little bit. Before I start, I just want to remind everyone not only to like and to share these videos that I'm doing, but also to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because when you do that, you also get to see my other video series called Pop Culture and the Parsha, where I talk about the parsha each week, and I make some kind of a connection to some aspect of pop culture. So, like, subscribe, do all those things, and you'll get to see all of my videos. This week, I'm in Givat HaMatos. Where exactly is Givat HaMatos? Why am I in Givat HaMatos, and what significance is there? Well, I'm going to get to all of that. Givat HaMatos is at the almost at the southern tip. Almost the southeastern tip of Yerushalayim, very, very close to Beit Lechem. For anyone who knows, who's driven through Jerusalem, you might recognize the street behind me. That street right over there is, that's Derech Hebron. Derech Hebron, it's the reason it's called Derech Hebron, pretty simple. It's because if you want to get to Hebron back in the day, this is the road that you would use. As a matter of fact, it actually was a main thoroughfare back in antiquity. It wasn't paved blacktop like you see now. It was a dirt road, but it was still a main passageway between Jerusalem, which is over there, and Hebron, which is down that way. And right in the middle of them is Beit Lechem. Bethlehem is just a few minutes away from me, but we're not quite there yet. Just behind me, this building over here is the Mar Elias Monastery. I'm not going to get the trivia question for today is, for whom is this monastery named? Where does this name Mar Elias come from? But basically, I want to point out the idea of it being a monastery. Monasteries were traditionally built out in the middle of nowhere. Monks didn't want to live near anybody, so they built their monasteries out in the middle of nowhere. But we're not out in the middle of nowhere, not exactly. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look a little bit over here, just behind me, I don't know how clearly it's coming in, but just behind me in that direction, you can see some of the buildings of Har Choma. Har Choma is a neighborhood that was built not too long ago. Very controversial neighborhood because it was built really, really close to Bethlehem. And the Palestinian Authority was complaining that by building that neighborhood so close to Bethlehem, it will not allow any further growth to Bethlehem. So it was very controversial when that neighborhood went up. It's Har Choma in the background right there. And I don't know how great the camera is, how much it's picking up, but beyond Har Choma, way, way in the distance, you can kind of make out today, it's almost a clear enough day where you can make out the mountains of the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. Nowadays, it's the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. In the biblical period, that territory would be the territory of the tribe of Gad. So if any of my viewers are from the tribe of Gad, that's your turf right over there. You gotta take it up with the king of Jordan to discuss some kind of reparations or something like that. But that is currently Jordanian territory. Biblically speaking, it was Gadian territory. And then a little bit further over here on the mountain across from me, right over there, again, I can't really see how clearly it's coming in. Yeah, you can kind of see it in the video. That building over there is part of the kibbutz Ramat Rachel. It's a kibbutz within the municipal boundaries of the city of Yerushalayim, which is kind of weird because usually kibbutzim are up north and they're their own entity. But this kibbutz finds itself within the municipal boundaries of Jerusalem. That large building that you're seeing is a hotel. I don't know if it's open right now, but when it is open, it's a lovely place. They also have a wedding hall. I think maybe about 50% of all my friends that I know have got married in that wedding hall. Very popular wedding hall, beautiful place to get married. And there's also some incredible antiquities. Maybe I'll save that for another story right outside your door. I'll take you guys for a tour of the antiquities that you can find just outside or just on the grounds of the kibbutz in Ramat Rachel. It's actually pretty cool. There's two different time periods that you can really focus on. There's There's the biblical time period, and there's a lot of archaeological finds from then. But there's also some Byzantine finds, which it's not even on the grounds of the kibbutz. It's just off the side of the road. Anyone who's ever driven on this stretch of road, you know that just after the traffic light that's over there, there's a gas station, and just adjacent to the gas station, right before the gas station, there's what looks like an open field and a bunch of stones on the floor. But if you ever examine those stones on the floor, it's actually a giant octagon. And no, it was not an MMA ring. They didn't have fights over there in that octagon. This octagon was a giant basis of a church that was located there. And again, I'll save that for another story. There's always time for another story. There are always more stories because there are stories everywhere. But that's not what today's video is about. Today's video, as it says right here, is about Givat HaMatos. So what's Givat HaMatos? What we know where it is now. So now we get the idea of where it is. It's right across the street from the Mar Elias Monastery. It's not far from Har Choma. You can see Jordan in the distance. It's right across from Ramat Rachel. Great. What is it? Why is it called that? Well, the name of it actually comes from an unfortunate tragedy. I'll show you the memorial for it right over here. In the 6-day war, there was a pilot named Dan Givon. I don't know why it says Lavan in parentheses on the memorial, but Dan Givon was a pilot who was flying in the area during the 6-day war. It was actually the second day of the 6-day war, June 6th, 1967. And apparently, according to the memorial, he was offering assistance to ground troops who were advancing onto the Mar Elias Monastery area. Apparently, there were Jordanian troops that were. That's right before my birthday. That's right, my Loazi birthday. My Gregorian birthday is June 7th. This was June 6th, 1967, but it's 10 years before I was born. So yeah, the point is that there were Israeli troops advancing on the Mar Elias Monastery, and Dan Givon was in a very small plane that was offering air support. Unfortunately, the Jordanians did have anti-aircraft weaponry, and they fired and they hit Dan's plane, and it went down right over here, right behind us. So they decided to not only put up this memorial to Dan, but they also named the entire hill Givat HaMatos in memory of, in honor of his sacrifice. So that's why it's called Givat HaMatos. But that's not the main reason why I brought you here. It's an interesting story, short little story. It's a sad story, but it's not the main reason that I brought you here. The main reason I brought you here is to show you something that's, in my opinion, fascinating. Well, it's gonna be fascinating. What do I mean by that? Hold on, let me just position the tripod so it doesn't blow over. I wanted to show you this. This is amazing. Now, you might be asking, what is so amazing about this? It's an empty hill. It's an empty hill now, but this is slated to be an entire neighborhood. Shortly, it actually dates back to the early 21st century, when you have in the 2001 or 2002, I forget exactly when, there were a number of Ethiopian immigrants who were living in caravans on this hill. They were since relocated to better accommodations because most people don't really want to live in caravans. They'll do it for a temporary period of time just because they have to, but most people don't want to live in caravans, certainly not indefinitely. So they were living in caravans on this hill, but they were moved away. But then the Israeli government decided this is actually a very nice hill. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and why not just build on it? Why not build a neighborhood? It's a prime location for a nice little neighborhood, and that's exactly what they're doing. Since 2004, there have been plans on the books to turn this into a neighborhood, and obviously things don't happen all that quickly. Things move relatively slowly. I'm sorry I keep getting distracted. There's this really cool bird in the distance over there. It's a beautiful bird. It looks like some kind of a crane, and I mean, I'll turn the camera, but I don't know how much you'll be able to see it. It's like in the bushes over there, walking around. I don't know if you're able to see it. I'm sorry. I know that that's like the ultimate joke about someone who gets easily distracted. It's like, oh, there's a bird over there. But it's just really nice. It's not like your regular average-sized sparrow that you normally see flying around Israel or something like that. It's a nice, tall, graceful-looking bird. And it's just pretty cool to see it, that's all. Anyway, so like I said, things move pretty slowly when it comes to municipal planning. And even though there are plans on the books here since 2004 to start building a neighborhood here, nothing has happened yet. But it's been in the news lately that they are moving forward with it. There's something along the lines of over 1,200 units, meaning places for people to live, whether it's apartments or houses, are slated to be built on this hill in the near future. I can't necessarily say exactly when, because for a number of reasons. First of all, things are difficult. You know, when it comes to municipal planning, who knows how long something is going to take. Second of all, we're talking about building in Jerusalem, which brings a whole host of new problems that you don't necessarily even have. It's not just regular bureaucracy. Anywhere you want to build, anywhere in the civilized world, you're going to have bureaucracy. You're going to have to get permits. You're going to have to get zoning and all kinds of things that I know so little about, but I can make it sound like I know a lot. But when it comes to building in Jerusalem, you have more problems. First of all, they're going to have to get archaeologists to come here and do just a cursory survey, meaning archaeologists are going to come to this hill with rudimentary tools, nothing heavy, no big shovels or anything like that. Maybe just like a little trowel or something like that. And they'll come up here and they'll just look around to see if maybe there is anything of historical value. If not, then the building will proceed and everything will go along just fine. But if they see that there might be something of historical value, that if they think, oh, you know what, this actually looks like something important, I think we're going to need to dig, then the entire project will be put on hold, and they'll have to bring in a team of archaeologists to actually conduct not just a survey, but they'll have to conduct a search of the whole area and dig around a little bit. Again, not really all that deep, just dig around to see if that archaeologist was right, to see if there actually is anything. And if there isn't, building will continue. But if there is something, then they're going to have to bring in more people and see exactly what was here. And it could delay or even cancel an entire building project. But such are the dangers, I guess you could use the word, such are the issues of building when you come to Jerusalem. But that's not all. When you build in Jerusalem, especially this part of Jerusalem, there are additional problems because we are, as I said, very, very close to Bethlehem. Bethlehem is about a 3-minute drive from here. And it's only that long because there's a traffic light that might be red. It's really, really close. Okay? That's about in that direction. Less than that, about a 1.5-minute drive in that direction, if I were to either go around this hill that way, or you can go around the hill that way. But on the other side of this hill, there is an Arab neighborhood named Beit Safafa. Beit Safafa is an interesting neighborhood because it was cut in half in 1967. In 1948. In 1948, at the end of the War of Independence, when the ceasefire lines were drawn up, the lines went right through the village of Beit Safafa. It was a village at that point. So half of it was in Jordan and half of it was in Israel until 1967, when Israel took over the other half. But if you go through it today, you can actually see there's a visible differentiation between the part that was always under Israeli control and the part that was partially under Jordanian control. The part that's under Jordanian control lacks proper sidewalks. The roads are tiny. The Jordanians did not put in, and I'm not saying anything bad about Arabs or Muslims or anything like that. I'm talking specifically about the Jordanian government. So yes, I am bad-mouthing the Jordanian government, and I know that the king is a fan of this show, and I know that he's watching, and I'm not trying to insult you personally. This was your father. But the Jordanian government did not invest a heck of a lot of money into what was perceived as Palestinian lands. They didn't particularly care about the Palestinians, so they didn't invest a lot into the Palestinian villages. So it was neglected. On the Israeli side, there was some infrastructure built in. So you do have sidewalks, you have wider streets. It's a little bit more comfortable to get through. And I've driven through a couple. I drive through it regularly. It's just easier to drive through the Israeli side than it is to drive through the former Jordanian side. In any case, Beit Safafa is about a minute away from here, literally a minute away from here. So you have Beit Safafa a minute away, and you have Bethlehem about 3 minutes away. So why is that important to the construction over here? Well, you have politics involved. So we already have the regular bureaucracy. We already talked about the archaeological bureaucracy, and now there's political bureaucracy. There's political issues that might get in the way, and that is that just as Har Choma that I pointed out earlier was controversial because the Jordanians said that they wouldn't be able to expand. Well, the residents of Beit Safafa are saying the same thing. They're saying it's not fair. You're taking over this land. As a matter of fact, as it is already, Israel is being accused of confiscating this land. I'm not exactly sure from who. I think they might have. The claim is that they confiscated it from Beit Safafa itself. Beit Safafa, as I mentioned, not only was it split in half, it was a village in its own right. It was a village in its own right. Over time, specifically after 1967, the city of Jerusalem grew around it. So now it's a neighborhood within the city of Jerusalem. But originally, it was its own village. So the claim was that this was also part of that village, and Israel illegally appropriated that land from Beit Safafa. Again, these are the political issues. I'm not weighing in on the politics of it, but these are the political issues that are involved. So the residents of Beit Safafa are not happy about the proposed neighborhood over here. The residents of Bethlehem are not happy about the proposed neighborhood over here, because they're both saying that if there is going to be a two-state solution, and again, I'm not weighing in on whether or not that's a viable option anymore, but if there's going to be a two-state solution, then it's not fair that there's going to be an Arab town and then a Jewish town and then an Arab town, because there won't be contiguous Arab settlement. The Jews have a similar argument, and they're saying, well, if there is going to be a two-state solution, you've got Har Choma over there, and you've got Ramat Rachel over there, and you've got Talpiot over there, all within just minutes of where I'm standing, and you also, about 4 minutes in that direction, you have Gilo. So there are Jewish neighborhoods also, and if you have an Arab neighborhood right in the middle, cutting it off, if there's a two-state solution, then there won't be a contiguous Jewish settlement. This is, by the way, this brings us to a much larger problem that a lot of people in the international community don't understand. A lot of people, whenever they hear that there's a problem between the Arabs and the Jews here in Israel, they get very Solomonic. They get very, very much like King Solomon, and they say, you know what, let's just take the country and cut it in two, and you take this and you take that. But it's not that simple, because you have a Jewish neighborhood there, an Arab neighborhood there, a Jewish neighborhood there, an Arab neighborhood there, and a Jewish neighborhood there. So what do we do with this? If you make it Jewish, it messes up the Arab contiguity. If you make it Arab, it messes up the Jewish contiguity. So who gets preference? If you say the Jews, then that's racist against the Arabs. And if you say the Arabs, it's unfair against the Jewish majority in this area. And I'm not necessarily talking about all of Jerusalem. I'm talking about specifically in this area. So what's the solution? I have no idea. I am not a diplomat. I am not a political expert on the subject. All I know is what the facts are, and I know what the problems are. That's why unless I'm going to be an absolute dictator, I don't want to get involved in politics at all. Because when you get involved in politics, you have to consider all these considerations. You have to consider all of these perspectives, and you need to be a lot smarter than I am to weigh the consequences of the decisions that we're talking about. I'm not that smart, and I'm not strong enough to withstand the criticism, because no matter what decision is made, there are going to be people that are unhappy about it. So I'm happy that I live in a democracy, and that I can vote for someone who will take the responsibilities of all those actions. What about a mixed neighborhood? A mixed neighborhood sounds delightful. It sounds delightful. It's just not likely. There's nothing legal there's no law that says that only Jews are allowed to buy in one area and only Arabs are allowed to buy in another area. Theoretically, every neighborhood in all of Israel can be a mixed neighborhood. But the facts don't reflect that. The facts are that Jews prefer to live with other Jews, Arabs prefer to live with other Arabs, and quite frankly, it's not just those two population groups. Everybody does that. Americans that move to Israel like to move to places where there are other Americans that have moved to Israel. That's why places like where I live in Efrat, or places like Chashmonaim, or other places, there are a lot of Americans living in those places. You have the same thing with French people, French Jews that make Aliyah. They want to live with other French Jews, and that's why you have a lot of French people living in places like not Naharia, not Naharia, for whatever. The point is, people like to live with other people like them. So there's no law saying that this can't be a mixed village. It would be wonderful if it was a mixed village. Everyone can hold hands and sing Kumbaya. It would be a fantastic thing. I'm not saying that sarcastically. It would be great. Unfortunately, the reality doesn't bear that out, and it would most likely be a Jewish neighborhood. By the way, having said that, in Jerusalem, you actually have different legal issues with the status of. Thank you, Francesca. You have the different legal issues with the status of the Arabs living in Jerusalem because many of the Arabs living in Jerusalem are not full Israeli citizens. They are resident aliens. They have a different political status than Arabs in the rest of the country. So specifically here in Jerusalem, it makes things even more complicated. I don't know if that means that they have any kind of restrictions as to where they're allowed to buy. That is something that I can look into, but it could be that maybe they won't be allowed to buy here. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not sure of the legal ramifications of slating this as a Jewish neighborhood or slating it as an Arab neighborhood. But as of now, it's slated to be a Jewish neighborhood, which, as I said, brings all kinds of issues. We'll see what happens. Like I said, the plans began in 2004. Here we are at the end of 2020, and nothing's happened yet. We'll see. We'll see what the future brings. Maybe in a couple of years from now, you'll come back here and you won't recognize the place. You won't see these cute little olive trees that are dotting the hillside, but instead you'll see parks with different trees, and you'll see houses, and you'll see people tending their gardens or planting their little planters on the balconies of their apartments. Who knows? Who knows what the future will bring? I certainly don't, but I'm eager to see it play out. That's about it for this week's show. I wanted to just answer the trivia question that I asked earlier, so I'm going to walk back over here so we can see the monastery once again. Dragging my microphone cord with me. So there, right in the background, we have the Mar Elias Monastery right across the street from where I am. And the trivia question is, for whom is that monastery named? Now, I said earlier that monks wanted to live out here because they wanted to be away from everybody. But the names always have significance. Whenever they name their monastery after something, it usually means it's named for somebody important. And this is no exception. Mar Elias, Mar is in Hebrew, it just means Mr. There's actually a wonderful podcast called Jewish Our Story. That's me and my friend Donnie Eisenstock. We started a podcast. We've only done 2 episodes so far, but we're starting to put up more of them. And we talk about the idea of last month, the month that just ended a couple of days ago, Mar Cheshvan, about why it has the name Mar in it. Mar means bitter, but it also means Mr. So why is it called Mar Cheshvan? The answer is it has nothing to do with being either Mr. or bitter. The actual name of the month is Mar Cheshvan. I'm sorry, Jordan, I forgot to tell you about the podcast. I record it every Monday, and I'm going to send you every episode, both episodes that we have so far. But yeah, there's the name of the month, Mar Cheshvan, that's just the name of the month. It actually was Warach Shman back in Babylon. Warach Shman literally means the 8th month. It's what October means, and October I know is the 10th month, but the word October literally means 8th month. So that's what Warach Shman means, 8th month. And somehow throughout history there was this mix-up between the letters, between the W and the M, and instead of Warach Shman, it was Marach Shwan, and Marach Shwan became Mar Cheshvan, and that's where the name Mar Cheshvan comes from. So what does this have to do with the monastery? Well, the word Mar, that's what I said. I said that was in Hebrew. In Hebrew, it's Mr. or bitter. But in Arabic, Mar is a sign of kavod, a sign of respect. It's a word that you use when you want to honor someone. So Mar Elias is the honored Elias. And who's Elias? Elias is the Arab version of Elijah, or Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. According to Christian tradition, when Elijah the prophet was on the run from King Ahab, not Captain Ahab, King Ahab, He was on the run from King Ahab, and he was fleeing down south. The second book of Kings tells us that Elijah went to Horeb, and in order to get there, he was up north. In order to get there, he had to travel south. So they say that he actually spent the night right over here on this hillside. And supposedly, I've never been myself, but supposedly inside the monastery, there's a rock with the indentation in the shape of a man, and they say that that's where Elijah slept that night. That's where Elijah the prophet spent that night while he was on the run. It's kind of like when you go into the United States and you have a George Washington slept here house, and there's like a plaque on the house, George Washington slept here, and it's a big deal. So this is that, but on a biblical scale. This is monks building an entire monastery saying Elijah the prophet slept here. And I'm not trying to belittle it. It's a very cool thing. We do things like that all the time. We build, synagogues and memorials over historical places where historical events were supposed to have taken place, even though we don't necessarily have any proof that they took place there. So the same thing is true here. We have no idea if he actually did sleep here, but there is a strong tradition that he did, and so that's why the monastery is there. So next time, for those viewers who do drive on this road regularly, next time you pass by here and you see the Mar Elias Monastery, you know that Mar Elias is named after Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, and that's where it gets its name. So there's the trivia question. That's it for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the story as much as I did. I hope to see how this whole story here on Givat HaMatos unfolds. Maybe I'll keep you posted as the years go on. If I keep doing this show, I'll let you know, and we'll watch it together. We'll watch it get built together. It'll be a nice, fun thing. So till next week, like I said, like and share this video. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can see this show as well as my pop culture and the Parsha. I will be letting everybody know how to find and listen to my podcast that I'm doing with my good friend Danny Eisenstock. And yeah, that's about it for now. So until next week, take care, everybody.